When the embryonic forms of the Primarchs, the genetically engineered sons of the Emperor of Mankind, were scattered into the warp, each capsule would eventually come to land upon the surface of a different world. With only a few exceptions, each Primarch would be raised by adoptive parents. Over time, each Primarch would achieve great accomplishments, such as bringing peace to their world, or forming an empire before their eventual reunion with the Emperor. But one Primarch would stand as being unique amongst his brothers, the Primarch of the Alpha Legion, Alpharius. The most commonly accepted account of Alpharius's rediscovery details that the last Primarch made contact with Imperial forces first, leading an assault against the fleet of the 16th Legion of the Legione Astartes, the Lunar Wolves. Alpharius's forces would launch a series of hit-and-run attacks to draw the lead vessel, which had the Primarch Horus Lupercal on board, into the open, thus leaving it vulnerable. Alpharius and an assembly of soldiers under his command would board the Lunar Wolves' ship and fight their way to the bridge where he and Horus would meet at last. As the story goes, once Alpharius and Horus locked eyes upon one another, the two would realize that they were in fact brothers, and Horus would take Alpharius under his wing for a period of several months before informing the Emperor of the Primarch's discovery. Despite this being the most commonly accepted version of events in regards to Alpharius's reunion with the Imperium, it is in fact a lie. There are multiple other accounts detailing Alpharius's origins. One of these accounts was that the Primarch landed upon a desolate world within the Mandragoran stars, whose population wiped itself out long ago in a world-encompassing war. Alpharius's gestation capsule would land within the remains of a ruined city, and the Primarch would grow to maturity isolated, forced to regularly fight off the descendants of the war's survivors in the process. Alpharius's liberation would come due to a chance encounter with a piratical band of Xenos and half-human renegades who landed upon the world in search of plunder. Alpharius would then slaughter these pirates and commandeer their vessel, leaving that world and travelling the stars in order to search for his father. Despite this account being taken from the mind of an Alpha Legion centurion who was captured by the Legio Custodes, this account is also documented as being a lie. Two more accounts are taken from the text known as the Codex Hydra. The first of these particular accounts was that Alpharius landed upon the world of Bar Savor. According to this specific account, Alpharius would spend the first 10 years of his life upon the world, growing to maturity amongst the world's techno-oligarch population. At some undocumented point in time after his 10th year upon the world, a Xenos race known as the Sloth would lay siege to Bar Savor and begin slaughtering and subsequently feeding upon the world's population. Alpharius, however, was the only being who was able to continue to oppose this new threat. Despite the Primarch's efforts, the Sloth would eventually defeat and capture him, becoming intrigued by his strength and resilience. Seeing potential within the Primarch, the Sloth would keep him as a curiosity, eventually torturing and experimenting upon the Primarch to use him as a biological weapon. In spite of being within the captivity of the Sloth for an undefined period of time, the Emperor would eventually learn of Alpharius's location, and would personally lead an assault against the Xenos in order to recover his lost son. The Emperor would even ram his flagship, the Bucephalus, into the heart of the Sloth vessel in an attempt to rescue Alpharius. Following the aftermath of the battle, Alpharius would remain by his father's side, while the Emperor sought to undo the damage done by the Xenos that was inflicted upon the Primarch's body and mind. This account is not only listed as being a lie, but it is also seemingly contradicted by another entry within the Codex Hydra that stated that out of all the Primarchs, Alpharius was the only one who avoided being scattered throughout space, when the warp rift that opened upon Terra whisked away the capsules containing the embryonic Primarchs. Despite avoiding such a fate, the young Primarch was gravely injured as a result. The Emperor would then raise Alpharius in secret, lest the Chaos Gods learn of the infant Primarch's fate and attempt to separate father and son once more. Despite all of these accounts being documented as lies, as stated within Horus Heresy Book 3, Extermination, it is also stated that each of them contain a grain of truth within them. Because of this, is it possible to cobble together a feasible account of the Alpha Legion Primarch's true origins? Now, it's also worth being reminded of, at this time, that the Alpha Legion was unique in that they did not just have a singular Primarch, but in fact had two, Alpharius and his twin brother, Omegon. As such, at least two of these origins can be partially true, without necessarily contradicting one another. There is also the fact that some of these origins are seen as common knowledge to the Battle Brothers of the Alpha Legion, as well as being listed in their Legion's historical documents. The contradictory nature of these accounts could simply be accounted by the fact that these origins may not necessarily relate to just Alpharius, but to Omegon as well. With these factors in mind, the following origin is proposed for both Alpharius and Omegon.
When the warp tear that scattered the nascent Primarchs across the galaxy opened up, within the Emperor's gene labs, the pod containing Alpharius and Omegon was damaged as a result. Omegon managed to escape his pod before it was spirited away. This premature removal from his incubation pod resulted in the young Primarchs teetering upon the brink of death, but would ultimately be saved by the Emperor, who managed to place the young Primarch on life support until he recovered from his injuries. The Emperor would then erase the knowledge of this Primarch from the minds of those scientists and custodians who witnessed the warp tear, and would go on to raise Omegon in secret, so that no plans to kidnap or assassinate the young Primarch could come to fruition. This would result in Omegon forming a strong bond with his gene father in the process. As Omegon grew to adulthood, his psychic connection with his twin would be re-established, and the Primarch would help guide the Emperor towards his twin brother's location. Alpharius's incubation pod would be deposited upon a desolate world within the Mandragoran stars. Here, Alpharius would grow to maturity and begin to search for a way off of this particular world, which would arrive with a group of pirates searching for treasure. Alpharius would slaughter these pirates and commandeer their ship, whose autopilot functions would direct the craft back to the world of Bar Savour. Here, Alpharius would be regarded with fascination by the world's population, who valued science itself as a great art. Witnessing the potential within the Primarch's gene-forged body and mind, the Barsovians would then school the Primarch in many scientific disciplines and philosophies. Alpharius would be regarded as a legendary demigod by the people of Bar Savour, and over time, the Primarch would become the leader of the world's population. The peace upon the world, however, was not to last, as the world would be invaded by the Sloth. The bulk of the world's population would be exterminated, save for Alpharius and a handful of Barsavian soldiers who would be tortured and experimented upon by the Xenos. Over time, with Omegon's help, the Emperor's forces, which included the warriors of the Lunar Wolves Legion, would find the Sloth fleet, and an intense orbital battle would commence. The Emperor would ram the Bucephalus directly into the heart of the Sloth flagship, causing catastrophic damage. Left unattended, during the confusion of the battle, Alpharius managed to escape his bonds before freeing the other Barsavians. The ragtag group, led by Alpharius, would then commandeer a Sloth craft in order to flee the carnage. Thinking the craft contained a Sloth boarding party, the Imperial fleet attempted to shoot it down, but Alpharius managed to direct the craft with preternatural skill, using it as a makeshift boarding torpedo. The vessel impacted and breached the superstructure of one of the Lunar Wolf's ships. Alpharius and the Barsavians emerged from the craft and began to kill everything in their path, Alpharius's instincts commanding him to do so in order to survive. Alpharius realized that he needed to fight his way to the bridge and lead his soldiers to a desperate charge. The Barsavians would eventually be killed one by the defending Astartes on board. When they reached the bridge, the remaining Barsavians would be slain, but Alpharius would reap a heavy toll upon the Astartes in the process. He then leapt upon the Astartes officer on the bridge, but something stayed his hand. Alpharius recognized that this particular officer was in fact his twin brother Omegon, the psychic connection between them confirming it. The Emperor would then meet with both of the twin Primarchs, celebrating Alpharius's reunion with his father and twin. The Emperor would then order Alpharius to spend several months beside his brother Horus Lupercal, who would teach the last Primarch about the Imperium and the Great Crusade, while the Emperor and Omegon returned to Terra, who would take command of the Alpha Legion as Legion Master before the official announcement in regards to Alpharius's reunion with the Emperor.
Now, admittedly, this proposal is entirely speculative, and as such, this entire chain of events may not have even happened. But if events similar to these did indeed unfurl, then this could also explain Omegon's inner conflict in regards to the Horus heresy, at the very least during the early stages of it. After all, Omegon seemed more reluctant than his brother to join forces with Horus, and would even resort to the outright sabotage of his twin brother's schemes. This was even demonstrated within the story The Serpent Beneath, where Omegon would instruct the warriors of Sigma Squad to destroy an Alpha Legion stronghold known as the Tenebrae Station, before informing his brother that the station's destruction was simply due to an unforeseen breach in security. After all, if Omegon was indeed raised by the Emperor himself from infancy, then this could very well have fostered a strong bond between father and son. A bond that Omegon himself would have been more reluctant to break. What do you think the true origins of Alpharius were? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.